Wagwan, guys. Wagwan, back again with another one. You don't know. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Subscribe is more meaningful still, so the video can always be here for you. So, anyway, China's goal stockpiling is dollar warning sign. It is. It is. So, written by William Pesek. So, anyway, one of the worst kept secret in global central banking is the extent to which Chinese officials are swapping dollars for gold. So Governor Yi Gang's team at the People's Bank of China isn't admitting as much, but it doesn't have to. It's the clear policy trajectory Chinese leader Xi Jinping has pursued in recent years, internationalizing the yuan as a top rival of the dollar. But China has been up to that for a long time, though. They've been announcing them along with Russia, been announcing a second currency. Look at Iraq. Saddam Hussein mentioned another currency. The guy in Libya, what's his name there? Muammar Gaddafi announced uh, trading more so with gold, and you saw what the who did to them. So anyway, so X's position hasn't changed as much as other governments are catching on. Catching on that trust is warning in the global reserve currency, and an alternative to the dollar is badly needed. Particularly as the U.S. national debt zooms past thirty trillion dollars. Inflation is at 40-year highs. The Federal Reserve is pushing the biggest economy into recession, and a band of firebrand Republicans threaten to play politics with Washington's debt limit again. So, not surprisingly, central banks that once hoarded dollars are buying gold at the fastest clip on record. In the July September quarter, central banks more than quadruple gold purchases from a year earlier, adding nearly a net 400 tons already sizable stockpiles. These figures from the World Gold Council are no aberration. The year to date flurry of gold buying already well surpassed any 12-month period since 1967. This has traders guessing who the real whales are here. That's true. I heard Kathy, is it Kathy Williams or what's her name is from Ark Investment, saying that she hoped that SBF was the goat because this man lost so much money, so much money, billions and billions of dollars. This guy took people's money, and it's such a weird coincidence, right? Because with all that this guy have done, he was in bed with everybody. I mean, I've seen commercial with even Steph Curry talking about, you know, being a spokesperson for them. Even what's his name, the guy from Dragon's Den, or I can't remember his name, Kevin O'Leary. Kevin O'Leary was a spokesperson for FTX, right? And this is an entity that was regulated. This was an entity that was very close to the regulators in Washington D.C., but they were not regulated. So it's just weird, and it's an odd coincidence that came to mind that with all that's being said, how come no one, I haven't even heard anything about them going after this guy, but yet, of course, we all know why they're in Ripple's ass, right? So anyway, punters doing the math can confirm that about 90 tons worth of purchases can be traced to Turkey. Uzbekistan, 26.1 tons. Turkey, 31.2 tons. We're talking about gold here. India, 17.5 tons. And other developing nations. The other 300 tons is widely assumed bear Chinese fingerprints. Wow. So these ambitious to increase the yuan's use in trade and finance would, well, hey, Z is smart. The man need ODL on, right. He needs some ODL to back up the yuan, and I think that's what is smart. Don't knock the man now. So, anyways, these ambitions to increase the yuan's use in trade and finance would get a huge boost of Beijing's made if Beijing made it fully convertible. Dito, Dito for giving the PBOC independence from Communist Party meddling. In the interim, though, U.S. officials are doing Z's works for him as Washington takes for granted the dollar's exorbitant privileges, as 1960 French Finance Minister Valéry Giscard d'Estaing put it. Hopefully I don't mess that up. So let's continue. Let's focus here. Let's focus. I know it's been a while since I read anything, and it's been over a week, and I'm kind of rough. I need to be consistent. So then, one can connect dots back decades, but the last four presidents all share the blame. George Washington, George W. Bush, president from 2001 to 2009, blew Washington's budget surplus on a giant tax cut for the wealthy. Yes, he did. He also led the world into war. Then he launched a costly and credibility slamming war on terror. Next, Barack Obama 2009 to 2017 failed to treat the underlying causes of the Lehman Brothers crisis. Uh, uh, anyway, continue. Tending to the symptoms instead. It was on his watch that Republicans played around with the government's debt ceiling. In 2021, I said, well, listen, man, don't blame Barack Obama for nothing. Blame the people who put him in office. He tried, and they veto every damn thing. They deny all of his shit. I mean, there's a bunch of other things that the policies that he put in place that they didn't deny. But all the meaningful one, look at, man, the Times, the New York Times. I remember when they first got elected, the New York Times put out a newspaper with Barack Obama and Michelle Obama as monkeys. This is in America. This, yes, monkeys on the picture. So really, the Times, as influential as they are and huge as they are around the world, not just in America, is gonna paint their president like that? What respect do you think they had for Barack Obama? So anyway, let's continue reading. It was on his watch that Republicans played around with the government's debt ceiling. It was on whose watch? I don't think Barack Obama had much power in that office. In 2021, S&P Global Ratings yanked away Washington's AAA credit rating. Donald Trump's arrival in 2017 saw another budget busting tax cut. Oh yeah, because Donald Trump is for the rich. One that dwarfed Bush Trump's China trade war, meanwhile, undermined trust in U.S. leadership. And that same trade war, it messed up a lot of farmers. A lot of farmers face high price. Farmers had it bad to begin with because they were battling with GMO taking over everything and patenting all the seeds. They were battling with all of that, and then Obama. That's one thing Obama did was made it so that GMO could not ever be sued. I don't know if I understand how that works. Sound like a dictatorship to me, right? So, what they passed that though. They passed that you cannot sue GMO, and GMO does not have the right to put any labels on their products. Thank you, Obama, and the American government for that. So, Trump's China trade war messed up a lot of farmers all around the world. So, anyway, let's continue. His bro beating of Fed Chairman Jerome Powell into cutting rates was allowed by one of the world's most incompetent COVID 19 responses, resulting in an unthinkable 1 million plus deaths. Joe Biden's arrival in 2021, and you don't see these guys getting prosecuted. You didn't see Bush getting prosecuted for a false war, false weapon of mass destruction war in Iraq. You didn't see Obama getting prosecuted for killing Muammar Gaddafi without any proof whatsoever of the so-called war against humanity that they claim against them. You didn't see none of these guys. You didn't see nobody. You didn't see Clinton getting prosecuted for his close ties with those child molesters. You didn't see none of these guys. That's one thing this government doesn't do not do, is prosecute their presidents, no matter what. Donald Trump is responsible for over 1 million people death during the season of COVID-19, and nothing, right? So anyway, Joe Biden's arrival in 2021 saw a fresh explosion of government spending. It added an already chronic public debt challenge and pumped money into an economy already running hot amid supply chain turmoil. So now they're blaming Joe Biden and calling him, this is the man called the man Steeple Joe. They're blaming Joe Biden for all of this foolishness that was already on a down spiral from 20 years ago. You know, I don't know how they're gonna, as I said, Ripple give it is America's only hope right now. Okay, there was no hope. There was no other hope. The country is in over $30 trillion in debt, and those are the numbers that are being released. That's too much for any country to carry. And so why China is ditching the dollar for gold. And that is so smart because the dollar is not backed by anything. So why would I be buying up the dollar because I can sell it and make a profit or whatever to other countries when it's not backed by anything? The American government can easily just turn around and go the other way. And here's the dollar falling, China falling, every of the other countries falling. Trust me, Ripple, Ripple is the American government last hope to strengthen the dollar. Yeah, or even to buy them time to create another way out. Anyway, let's continue. It added, so Joe Biden's arrival in 2021 saw a fresh explosion of government spending. It added to an already chronic public debt challenge and pumped money into an economy already running hot amid supply chain turmoil. Biden hasn't worked fast enough to increase productivity to take sorry to take the onus off the Fed to curb inflation. Fast forward 671 days and dollar selling is picking up speed. To some extent, this reflects investors betting that the days of Fed's hiking of rates in 75 basis point intervals are over. Yet the warning signs from central banks racing to buy gold are hard to ignore. Yeah, they might buy it because they see that China is buying it up. And everybody wants online liquidity, right? So anyway, the yellow metal is shining at the moment thanks to its nature of not being another nation's liability, says Nikos Kavelis, managing director at Precious Metals Consultant Metals Focus. We think overall central banks will remain net buyers for the foreseeable future. Some of this reasonable reflects the difficult public debt calculus now dawning on global markets. Economists Emre Tiftik at the Institution of International Finance notes that the global debt to GDP ratio look at this number and listen to, if you can't look, listen. The global debt to GDP ratio is near 343%, is now 20% points lower than the peaks in Q1 2021, helped by strong growth and inflation by inflation. so sorry, helped by strong growth and flattered by inflation. However, he says, the emerging market debt to GDP ratio continues to rise, notably in the financial sector. Tiftik explains that global debt insurance adjusted for inflation is now at multi-year lows. Yet, as governments look to support growth and meet higher funding needs, 2023 should see more sovereign insurance at a moment when currency depreciation is creating additional headwinds for borrowers, including the mature market with the US dollar liabilities. Who's the mature market now? The hedge funds. So bottom line, Tiftik says the global sovereign interest bill is set to increase rapidly, notably for sub-Saharan Africa, but also in Europe, and Asia. This explains some of why demand for gold is surging. So the price of gold should be going up right now. Whether central banks gold buying continues remains anyone's guess. Economist Gregory Dacko at EY Parthenon notes that it appears the Powell Fed recalibra- re- re- sorry, recalibrate. I don't think I've ever pronounced this word before. Recalibrate monetary policy at a November FOMC meeting by adopting a new speed versus destination paradigm, indicating an intention to reach a higher terminal Fed funds rate while doing so at a slower pace. Of course, everything's slow and low. Actually, no, don't associate low with the Fed. Slow and high. DACO has that central banks' determination in tightening monetary policy aggressively, along with the lagged effects of monetary policy on the economy, increase the odds of an over tightening. U.S. Fed Board of Governors member Christopher Waller said last week, "We're not softening. Quit paying attention to the pace and start paying attention to where the endpoint is going to be. Until we get inflation down, that endpoint is still a way out." And you know what? They're not looking to slow down inflation anytime soon. One reason being Ripple. Ripple. If they were to ever slow that joint down and the economy should go back to where it should be, they lose more control. That's what they're afraid of. So in the interim, Beijing had been dumping US dollar between the end of February and the end of September. China sold at least 121 billion of US treasuries. That selling intensified around time Vladimir Putin Russia invaded Ukraine. Since July, China's imports of gold from Russia have increased sharply. That month alone, China's gold transactions surged a roughly 50 times the same year earlier. Granted, Beijing has been pruning its dollar holdings on and off since 2018, since more than that, since longer. Let's go back to 2009 when Trump launched 2018 when Trump lost his trade war. At mid-year, China Treasury's stockpile was the lowest since 2010. So anyway, that was a year after then Chinese Premier Wen Jiabao said Beijing was concerned about the safety of our asset and urged Washington to honor its words, stay a credible nation and ensure the safety of Chinese assets. The years later, 2 years later, 2 years later, where are we at now? 20 minutes. Hopefully hopefully we're wrapping this up. Lord Jesus, there's still more to read. This is a long road to read, but all right. Let's try to focus on this, all right? So 2 years later in 2021, S&P confirmed Wen's darkest fears when it downgraded the US government debt that was in response to Republican lawmakers refusing to raise Washington's statutory borrowing limit, risking default. Now, as Republicans prepare to hold power in the House, there is chatter about holding the debt ceiling hostage again. This burn it all down tactic would make it hard for Biden's government to pay its bills. Fallout from the resulting default could dwarf the 2008 global crisis. Fiscal, and a lot of people are calling for that. Fiscal profligacy, I learned something today, meanwhile, would leave Biden's Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen little latitude if another COVID variant emerges and slam the economy. The resulting slowdown at a time of elevated inflation could spell doom for the corporate profits and U.S. stock prices. Not really. Not really. Not with digital money. This dynamic would unfold at a moment when the yuan is coming into its own. The latest figures from the Bank for International Settlements, BIS, rank the yuan as its world's fifth most traded currency. China's currency leapfrogged to fifth place from eighth in just 3 years. The PBOC also is miles ahead of the Fed in creating a central bank digital currency. During the Beijing Olympics earlier this year, the e-yuan was used in limited fashion. It was at first for a major monetary authority, giving China a first mover advantage in rewriting the future of money. Yet China, they had that on their agenda from a long time. When they kicked out Bitcoin, remember that? When they kicked out Bitcoin earlier 2021, that's what they wanted to do. As soon as they announced the last foots, the last toes on in their country of miners, Bitcoin miners, that's when you hear of rumors and news about them pilot phasing their digital currency. So anyway, yet Washington's biggest fear now is that major monetary authorities will see a first mover advantage to dump dollars. The way the US pulls off the magic trick of a massive and growing debt not causing yields to skyrocket is Asian savings. Along with Japan and China, Asia's top 10 holders are sitting on about $3.5 trillion of US IOUs, just as inflation surges the most in decades and political polarization deepens. Wow. 3.5 trillion of IOUs? Add that on to the $30 trillion in debt. La. Fed policy turmoil also matters. Analysts at UBS write that investors have had mixed feelings towards gold in 2022, in part due to the cross currents of rising real rates and strong dollar bearish versus high inflation and elevated macro uncertainty. They expect the Fed to begin cutting rates in 2023 from from basically 5% to 3%, 3.25%, driving gold up to basically $1,900 an ounce from 1740, which it is now. China assumed gold hoarding comes at the dollar's expense, suggesting the momentum for the yuan's use as a reserve currency is accelerating. Of course, China's economic stumble this year bears watching. Of course they're watching, and China's watching too. Everybody's watching what's going on. X's growing killing zero COVID. Lockdowns push GDP growth to the lowest pace in 30 years. This added pressure to a catering property market. Listen, guys, this is no surprise. This may be a surprise to the people who are reading this or just learning about it now. But this has been going on for 20 years now. It's only getting worse. As even China, Bull Ray Dalio, founder of hedge fund Bridgewater Associates, notes there is great confusion over whether Xi is easing up on his draconian COVID lockdowns or doubling down. As economist Tyrant Cam at Fetch Ratings notes, we expect the government to take further steps to stabilize the sector. However, policies aimed at supporting home demand will remain measured and selective as the government avoids policy that could lead to home price reflation. The direction of the zero COVID policy and timely delivery of pre sold homes are also key factors to home buyers' sentiment. Effective implementation of recently announced measures to support private developers is also important for liquidity. Yet the longer term trajectory for global currency markets remains dollar negative as China and other top treasurers Olden Powers, which into an asset John Maynard keynotes, once dismissed as barbaric relic, the relic is now flashing red alert. Red alert for the dollar. Listen, this joint has been flashing freaking orange from 10 years ago. And a lot of people, a lot of economists, and even religious personnel has been sounding the alarm to the American government. They know what's going on. They knew what was going on. This is all a part of the agenda, guys. This is all a part of the agenda. Anyway, guys, thank you for tuning in. I know this is a long video, but we gotta read. And when you have a reading going good, don't stop. Just keep going. You know what I'm saying? Even if I don't get no views on this, one of the reasons for me building this channel or creating this channel is to read. I want to be able to develop my vocabulary skills and give myself more options when it comes to words. You know, at one point in my life, I suffered from a bad case of social anxiety, where I wasn't able to find proper words to express how I was really feeling, or I get word blocks sometimes, and I don't like that, especially when you're in a group of people and you're trying to have a conversation and you're like, people are literally delivering your words for you. I don't like that. So reading is fundamental. Reading is fundamental. Guys, subscribe to the channel. Let's build a community of readers. All right. So anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for Asia Times. Thank you for Pesek for this article. Out.